Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. It's a new year. It's 2022. It's a Friday, January 7th. We had a couple inches of snow out there. And this is one of those interviews that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And it's funny, if you don't plan things, sometimes they just sprout and they're there. So getting a chance to interview Matthew Dankner, who will be graduating from McGill University in 2023. That's a year from now, sort of, with an MD, PhD degree. And I've known Matthew for a long, long time. Matt, we talked about what do we call each other? Long story, not important. But anyway, the things that he does with cancer research has intrigued me for years and years. And we've talked about this off camera, obviously, and we've talked about it for a long time. And so we put together what I think is going to be a really special kind of interview, because we're going to go off into a million different tangents in a million different areas and then I just love talking to Matthew about. So that's my intro. Happy New Year, everybody out there. Happy Healthy New Year. And let me introduce, can't call you doctor yet, but almost Dr. Matthew Dankner. How about a little bio? And part of that, when did you decide you wanted to be? You're a young guy. When did you want to be? So take it away, Matthew.
Yeah. So first, thanks, Cal, for having me on the podcast. It's been a long time coming. I've always wanted to be on. So yes, I'm an MD PhD student at McGill. I'm currently in my 7th year of the 8-year-long marathon of a program. Why I wanted to get into it, basically what it is it's a degree that combines medicine with research. So when I was coming up in undergrad, I thought I wanted to go to medical school, should do some research because that's what everyone needs to do these days to get into medical school. But I actually really, really loved the research that I was doing, and really developed a real passion for the research as much as anything. And I did not want to give that up. And so at some point I heard about this thing called MD PhD program, which is basically allowing you to do both, to pursue medicine, but also to pursue PhD to become really an expert in biomedical research. And so that's what I wanted to do. I kept doing research in my undergrad, built some skills, applied to the program at McGill and some other places, and was very lucky to get in at McGill. And so that's where I've been for the past 7 years now, and I've been really enjoying it.
Quick question: the 8 years, does that include undergrad? Is that a whole package?
No, that does not include undergrad. So
That's
it's
not.
no.
So you did your undergrad.
Yeah, so I finished my undergrad degree and then started this. And then afterwards I have residency and fellowship and all these things before I can be working. So it's a long road, but it's
a long road. It's a long road.
It's been very fulfilling so far.
Well, we'll talk about your research. It really is fulfilling. I was trying to digest some of that. I don't even know if it's relevant to ask. Do you have any, I'm going to throw in a nice word, proclivities? Do you have any leanings to, when you're finished with this journey, to go stay in research, or to go into private practice, or to combine?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any leanings?
So I definitely want research to be part of my career long term. Well, the concept of private practice, I'm in Canada, and hopefully we'll stay in Canada. There's not really private practice. We're in a socialized healthcare system. But I do want to have a 50-50 split of research and clinical practice, where I'd be what's called a clinician scientist.
Okay.
You work in the hospital, you see patients, you do clinical work, but you also run a research group and do research. So you're able to really have the synergy between your patients that you're seeing and being able to do research that studies their problems and then bring back solutions to those patients.
Okay, interesting. I I'm on the, we've talked about this in the past, but I'm on the advisory committee of the Women's Health Institute at Rutgers Robert Johnson Medical School. Long story, but I'm on it, and we have meetings uh, every Tuesday, Zoom stuff, and Dr. Bachman is exactly doing what you want to do. She combines research with clinical work in the hospital and sees some patients, and it's all in the research. She coordinates the whole research thing. And it's funny, I never thought to connect you to, but that's exactly what she does. And I've been going to these meetings for 3 years. But I finally had a meeting this past Tuesday that I just didn't want to be at. They were talking about some kind of new drug for endometriosis and pain, and they had they had the drug rep there and doing all this, and I'm saying to myself, I don't want to do this. I don't want to listen to this, because it's it's not that it's over my head, but it was kind of not in my world. But anyway, um, you mentioned socialized medicine in Canada, and you're a young guy. Do you have a gut feeling what works better, socialized medicine versus what we have here in the States? Uh, free market.
Well, there are definitely pros and cons to both.
I mean,
That
ultimately, for best patient care, what works best?
I think for best patient care, if you have, of course, if you have, then in your system you're going to do better off. But if you are not in the top 1% of your society, you're going to do better off in a socialized system about everywhere, as it is everywhere else in the world.
Okay.
I think, at least, like the top quality care you could find in the world is in the States, in some of the best hospitals in the world. That's no doubt about that. But I think if you're serving a population, which is what I think healthcare is, it's a population wide service, right? Or service or product or whatever you want to call it in American language. Having a socialized system where you have priorities based on patient needs rather than how much money they have is beneficial for society more broadly.
Okay. Okay. Over the years, I've said, because I'm more patient than I am professional, obviously, but I've discovered the joys of having, WebMD and all that kind of stuff, Google. So, whenever if I have a cold, I jump into that. Uh, um, so what I'm trying to say is, if I've written about it, some essays for people to become more of their own advocates, to learn a little bit more about themselves. Ultimately, it helps you as a practitioner to have a patient. Would you say that if to have a patient that's so much more educated now?
It's an interesting question, because I'm young. I'm coming up in the medical system, and all of our patients that I see are for the most part very well educated, and like go on WebMD and Google and things like this. And a lot of the more senior doctors all the time talk about how patients today are vastly different than they were 20, 30 years ago. There are pros to that, but there are certainly cons to that as well, where a lot of patients are really like have a tunnel vision that I have this because this is what Google told me. And then when they're told that, in fact, your labs and your imaging and all of our years of experience and knowing the literature tell us that, in fact, it's something else and we should do something else. A lot of patients have a hard time grappling with that, because yes, they are very empowered from Google, from WebMD, but it often puts people on the wrong path.
Uh-huh.
So it's the reality. These are, people use these tools. If I was not in medicine, I would use these tools as well. But there's cons to them for sure.
Okay. So even that whole aspect of patient care is changing, because patients are coming in with so much more knowledge.
Absolutely. And that's great. Like it's always good for people to, advocate for themselves, to be empowered. It's good that all this information is made public as a general rule, I think. But
Okay.
of course, like there are some issues that arise because of it. Not saying it's a bad thing, but just
It's just a whole new world.
yeah.
It is a whole new world. Um, so you just got over COVID.
Yes, I did. It's my first day post COVID
Yeah.
official.
So you got over COVID. Um, so some of this there's a few things here. It's a packed question. So you got over COVID. Me being an unscientist, and I'd love your opinion on this. My thinking is based on everything I'm seeing, and I think 2 nights ago I saw a little blurb that they have a new variant strain in France, and that's just how Omicron started in South Africa. So, my feeling, and I'd love to hear your feeling. My feeling is COVID is here forever. Ain't never going away until it ain't never going away. But I marvel at what you guys, the researchers of the world, did in coming up with a vaccine in a year. Um, I got to spit this question out. So we came up, and I came out of the 50s when polio was a horrible disease and it affected so many kids, mostly, including President Roosevelt. And I don't know, it took them 20 years to come up with a vaccine for that. And now we have COVID, and it took us a year, and it's not even alive, live attenuated that virus. It's RNA, whatever the hell that. So, do you feel? So I'm trying to spit this out. Do you feel that COVID is here forever, or you guys are going to be able to get rid of it?
Well, I think either is possible, but if I was a betting man, I would say that it's probably going to be here for all of our lives in some shape or form, just like the other coronaviruses that we have, circulating every year are, based on how transmissible it is and whatnot. But I don't think that is necessarily reason for alarm. That as the population becomes infected with it over and over again, immunized against it over and over again, uh, even if the virus itself doesn't change at all, its severity on our society will hopefully become more similar to the other cold coronaviruses that we have. That's my
Okay.
hope for all of this. But right now it's definitely acute. A lot of the population does not sees it as a brand new virus, has no way to fight it. Our hospitals are facing huge problems. But I am hopeful that as the years go on, the acuity of it, even if it's still here and even if there's new variants, um, will lessen. So a pessimistic take, but also I guess an optimistic take. And I
Okay.
do think too that we have a great capacity with vaccines now to create them on the fly, to target new variants specifically with the RNA technology, where you basically plug the sequence in a computer and you pop out your vaccine.
Wow.
You need to trial it in some people to make sure that it works and that it's okay. Um, but you don't need to take them through the same degree of trials that we did with the first iteration of the vaccine that took the whole year, um, because it's basically the same vaccine, just a few of the sequences are changed. So the high bar for determining how the vaccine works is not there anymore. So it could be expedited a lot faster. So for example, for the Omicron variant that we have going around, we could see vaccines if they're necessary against it in a couple months
Wow.
rather than years.
Wow. Wow. Um, you mentioned trials. In all your research, were you ever involved in trials of anything?
I'm involved in the early stages of some trials in
Okay. And
cancer, but
okay.
not infectious disease. So
Okay.
I could give I've been following COVID closely. I'm absolutely not an expert on COVID. I don't want to talk too much about COVID. I'm not a COVID person. Um, but I could, if you want me to chime in on whatever, I
No,
can
I just
chime
this was just in general. I just wanted your. I'm very pessimistic about it, based on everything I see, and I'm very uneducated about it. I just think it's here forever. Um,
in. Yeah.
and part of that is we the species, which is the title of this conversation.
Mhm.
We the species just haven't found a way to make sure we vaccinate. If everybody got vaccinated tomorrow, we'd be okay. It would just kind of disappear. But that'll never happen in the real world. Um, it just won't. And here in the States, you got 30% of our population who don't believe in it. Um, and every other day there's a story about somebody who's yelling and screaming, "I ain't getting vaccinated," and they're in the hospital and they die. Um, and and even that, even the news of that um, doesn't jar people. Um, Moving on, I love tapping in to you, and of course, when we're together outside of this, we always somehow segue and talk about this kind of stuff. Uh, and I love to run things by you because um, uh, your your intellect is kind of always, I always marvel at it, and your depth and the breadth. And of course, I'm alluding to the fact I've known you for a long time. Um, and so this is it's unscientific, but your view of the aging process. Can we slow it down? And this could be tied into some of the things you do research wise, but aging, can we slow it down? Taking 60 supplements a day, does that work? Does it help? Um, what's your feeling about aging?
Well, I guess the way that I think about aging is not really as one process of just, aging, but it's all the different aspects of health sort of deteriorating over time. As you get older, you have increased risk of your main killers, your heart disease, your strokes, your cancer. But associated with that is, the visual changes. The skin becomes wrinkled, the hair turns white, and then of course your muscles and your joints, all those associated problems. So, is there going to be one thing that magically fixes all of these problems simultaneously? I have a hard time thinking yes, but could be surprised. But what I do think we've done, and what we have successfully done over the past many years, is chip away at each of these individual components of aging substantially. Like we've done wonders in heart disease and stroke care and prevention. Same with cancer. So I think the life expectancy up until the past couple of years, maybe with COVID or maybe some other things, at least in Canada, I think the US started plateauing and going down first. But
Yeah.
the life expectancy generally over the past century has shot up dramatically. And I think will hopefully continue to with continued improvements in these things.
Okay. That's good to hear. I've been very conscious about aging. It's been, when I was your age, um, at Rutgers Pharmacy, one day I said to myself, that's when I started taking my cocktail of 60 things a day. But I said to myself, I don't think I really want to age traditionally. And so I tried to stay on top. I tried to do as much reading as I can. I did my cocktail of 60 supplements a day, all in my hand at one time, in my mouth, which you've seen me do as a young
Yeah, yeah,
as a
anytime.
young kid. So, and do I think it's helped? Yeah, a bit. There's no magic, as you said, there's no magic bullet, but it has helped. I'm doing this kind of stuff at an advanced age, and I do think it helps. But I also had a placenta injected into my knee a month ago. My knee, the joints and stuff, and I was part of actually I was part of a drug study, as a matter of fact, I never told you about this. They injected, I did it back in the summer and then I did it again. And, for 3 or 4 weeks after they put that placenta into my knee, it just felt way better. It did feel way better.
Hmm.
And the drug rep wished me Happy New Year the other day. It's kind of nice. Anyway, moving on. Slightly off topic, but I always like to do these straw polls since I went to the first Earth Day on April 22nd, 1970. And I've been an environmentalist of sorts for a long, long time. It made me stop eating meat because the beef industry contributes methane up there. So, of course, I haven't had any red meat since 1975. But as a full-fledged member of the millennial generation, what is your take on climate change, and does it scare you? You're a man of research, so we'll be able to come up with things. Maybe we'll come up with some kind of a vacuum cleaner that sucks out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But what is your take?
I'm concerned about climate change. I think it's something that is a big challenge that we have to face that will cause problems, for me, for my children, for my grandchildren. How exactly we get to solving it, I have no idea. I think there are a few pragmatic solutions to this, given that, we have our society's needs that we have now. We have a lot of, people that have urgent needs now, who are poor now, need their jobs now, and won't tolerate, shutting down their coal plant in the name of a future problem because, they need to put bread on their table now. So I don't really know what the best solution for these things are, but I'm hopeful that, science, industry will come up with some very groundbreaking solutions for this problem, as it has for many problems in the past. But with that being said, I do think we all have some responsibility personally to enact changes to help solve this problem, and not just rely on like you say, big vacuum cleaners to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere.
Isn't that great? By the way, that really is a viable, somebody that I wasn't pulling that out of left field. It's some kind of it's on some kind of,
Trees. They're called trees, Calvin.
I know that. And I know that, and Jane Goodall, this amazing woman, she's got a thing which I promote. We need to plant 3 trillion trees. We did that, we'd be okay. We need to plant. So I know it's trees, but there's also, by the way, near you, I think in Iceland. Yeah.
Not near me.
Well, near enough. It's closer to you than it is to me. But I think there's a company, I swear, they have a thing that like a smokestack that goes up way up into the atmosphere. I mean, and it sucks out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and it mixes that with cement, and it makes a great cement, for roadways, for cars to burn fossil fuels. I mean, it's sick, but the company up there actually did that. But the rate of the return on investment or not, it wasn't great. They were sucking for days and days and weeks and months, and they only pulled a little bit out, like negligible. But anyway, I said it for a reason, because somebody's doing it. Now to get a little heavy, we go from vacuum cleaners to cancer, and you're in the trenches in cancer. So it's a two-pronged question, and you can answer it however you want. You will anyway. But can we cure cancer? And I mean, you're going to talk about metastasis soon enough here with us. But can we cure cancer? And B, do we want to cure cancer?
That is a heavy question.
It's
So
heavy.
first off, can we cure cancer? Um, Cancer is not really one disease. I'm sure you've heard this before. Cancer is not one disease. Every cancer is so unique in its DNA mutations, its metabolic profiles, its epigenetics. Every cancer is very, very distinct. Even by the organ that it comes from, you can't really classify cancers. There's hundreds or thousands, or even to a certain extent, every cancer is a different disease. It's not like COVID, which is one virus that infects you. Cancer is a disease of born of yourself, where every single one is unique in a different way. So can we cure it? Can we cure each of these individual entities? The way that we've approached it really up until recently is sort of chipping away at little tiny pieces of that big picture of cancer. Certain cancers with this kind of gene mutation could be targeted with a drug. Does it even cure these people? It definitely prolongs their life. Is the word cure is sometimes difficult to use. Now we have all these new agents that are involved in turning on your immune system, your own body's immune system, to fight the cancer. Those are miracle drugs for a lot of people, but do they cure every cancer? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Are there any combinations of these immunotherapies with new immunotherapies with existing therapies that could increase the number of people that we can cure? Absolutely. And that's what is slowly happening. But in our lifetime, will people die of cancer? I think yes. I think there will always be people that die of cancer, until humanity destroys itself. Do we want to cure cancer? That's a really a more philosophical question than anything.
Yeah, it is.
I think from from a human perspective, of course, you want to alleviate suffering of people. You don't want people to suffer. You don't want people to die. You don't want pediatric cancer. Absolutely, you don't want children to die of cancer. You don't want young people to die of cancer. You don't want young adults to die of cancer. But if as of right now, cancer did not kill anyone, COVID would, in the present scenario, COVID would maybe make up a big chunk of the difference. But generally speaking, we would have a big issue of overpopulation, which I don't know if you want. That's really a deep ethical question of what it means if people don't die and you just keep increasing the population of the world. What's going to happen? People will probably suffer a lot more. And climate change becomes accentuated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We could
It's heavy, and it's
a whole rabbit hole.
yeah. It's a really heavy question, and I'm not gonna step out anymore around that question. It's funny. I talked to this guy yesterday out in Colorado, who I'm going to interview, and we talked about the climate, and he said part of it's due to consumption. We just have so many people on the planet consuming, and you got to feed the consumption, and which contributes to the climate degradation. And tied into that is, do we want to cure cancer? It's heavy stuff. It is heavy stuff. So that takes care of that. Now, staying on the heavy theme, and let's drift into some of the work you're doing. I kind of took a quick peek at some of the abstracts that you had there, and I eliminated most of them because it was way over my head. But there's a few there that I extracted the abstract, and looked at some of the research. So first of all, you're doing so much with metastasis. Define it, if you can. I mean, define it, and then I'll ask you a couple of specific questions. But define it. That's what your primary research thing is, metastasis, right?
Yeah. So really, my main interest is metastasis, which is when cancer spreads from its original source where it starts, whether it's your prostate or the breast or the lung, and goes elsewhere in the body. And metastasis is what accounts for over 90% of deaths related to cancer. So, if you're a woman with cancer in the breast, for example, It's not the growing tumor in the breast that will very often kill you. It's when it spreads to the bones and the brain and the lungs and the liver that will really cause you harm. And so that's what we're trying to learn, to understand biologically why that happens, and what can maybe be done to prevent or treat it once it does happen.
So that, I mean, that's everything. Metastasis, the spreading. Not, I wasn't even aware 90% of the deaths
Yep.
because of metastasis because it's spread.
Mhm.
So the work you're doing is like, wow. We can. I was looking at one abstract. You're doing some work with prostate cancer and the fact that it metastasizes to the bones. And you were looking into that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this was an interest of mine that I was working on for a few years. Prostate cancer metastasis to the bone. So as you know, prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men. Very, very frequently do men get prostate cancer, but less frequently does the prostate cancer actually cause them a problem. And a lot of men, they're diagnosed with prostate cancer. It stays sort of latent, doesn't cause them any problems. They then die from a heart attack or a stroke or something else. So one of our things that we were interested in is trying to figure out which prostate cancers will metastasize, specifically to the bone, because that's the most common site that prostate cancer spreads to first. And so we were interested in one particular gene that we found was associated with bone metastasis from prostate cancer. And so it's being included now in different gene panels to be tested, not used clinically right now at all, but to be tested to see if looking for this gene in people's prostate cancers can predict the likelihood that they then develop metastases later on, so that they can be interventions can be given to them.
By shutting off the gene?
Perhaps. Perhaps.
Heavy stuff. Then I also looked at you had a research abstract on colorectal cancers, and I saw the term precision oncology. So what does that mean?
So precision oncology, it's a bit of a loaded term these days, but generally what it means is uh, identifying specific treatments that will work for a specific person's cancer. So looking at the genome, the DNA inside a particular cancer, identifying particular mutations in that DNA that we have drugs for that specifically target that type of that type of tumor. And so there are a lot of great examples of cancers that we have what are called targetable mutations for, that you can apply this concept of precision medicine towards and treat these patients effectively with drugs that have the mutations, whereas in patients that do not have the mutations, the drugs would not work at all.
Wow.
And significantly prolong the life of these patients.
Wow.
But that does come with a caveat. It is a small percentage of patients with cancer that really can have precision oncology or precision medicine applied to them. But it's slowly growing. That every year we identify some more rare targetable mutations. But is this the thing that will cure all of cancer? I would argue definitely not. But there are many, many people out there who have derived a lot of benefit from this, and even more who will in the future from this concept.
Okay. I like that. It's kind of hopeful. Well, it is, and we live. I see it. We live in such an age of computers and AI and algorithms and so much stuff, and all that gets thrown in, like the COVID vaccine. So the hope for what you're doing, and for precision oncology, it's a great hope, truly. Some years ago, I went to a conference. It's called Singularity, and it was Ray Kurzweil, and it was a futuristic thing, and they had a whole bunch of different speakers, and then there was Michio Kaku, who wrote Physics of the Future, and Neil and I went to his lecture in the city, and he wrote a book, Physics of the Future. So he describes down the road, not, I mean, I don't know how many years down the road, but I'm shaving in the mirror. I'm shaving in the mirror in the bathroom that in the future has got a specialized kind of wallpaper. And the wallpaper really is loaded with different kinds of cameras that look into me while I'm shaving. And it's so sensitive that it picks up a single cancer cell, because it all starts with one cell. It picks up a single cancer cell and alerts somebody, and then I go to an office and they inject in me this precision oncology thing, and it finds that cancer cell and it kills it. Physics of the future. So anyway, I had asked you this before we went on air, and actually you gave me the answer. I didn't want to hear, but I've read some. I've learned, cancer cells need sugar. I know that it needs and must have sugar to grow. So I had proposed to you, if I went completely sugar-free for the rest of my life, not one drop of sugar in any shape, way, or form, would it help if there was a cancer thing inside me? And you said no. And why did you say no?
Well, I said no because all of our cells in our body, in cancer cells and other cells, they want sugar, and we have ways to make sugar that aren't just taking in sugar. It's called a metabolic pathway called gluconeogenesis that we can create sugar. Our livers are really good at it. That they take, if you just don't eat any sugar, you'll change fat and protein into sugar.
Wow.
And so will starving a cancer cell of sugar kill the cancer? I think definitely not. And I've even done this in the lab many times, that I have my cancer cells growing on a dish, and we give them juice that has, the normal juice we give them does have sugar because we want them to grow, and so we could do experiments with them. But if we just take the sugar away, they'll still grow.
Wow.
The reason why I do that is not always not at all to see what will happen if we take out the sugar for the sake of the question that you're asking, but for different corollary questions, if we're looking at particular genes or different things that we want to see that if their levels change in the absence of sugar. But the point is that the cancer cells still continue to be growing very happily without the sugar.
Wow. Depressing. Depressing.
But there is a lot of promise for metabolism as an approach to deal with cancer.
Right.
That it is a very evolving field. We know that cancer cells are what's called metabolically flexible, that they could change their metabolism based on what's given to them.
Wow.
And there may or may not be real ways that we could exploit this down the line for therapeutics. That's a bit outside of my direct area of research, but I have a lot of colleagues working in this space, and people are hopeful that there will be ways to metabolically target cancers. There already are to a certain extent, but going forward, there might be a big booming area in the next few years.
Okay.
To be determined.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff you're doing, it's like I almost want to come up there and take a look in the microscope and take a look at a cancer cell.
I could share some images. You don't have to look.
Which leads me to my last heavy question. You're doing a lot of stuff now with brain metastasis and cancer. Comments on that? It's a nasty, horrible cancer.
Yeah. So when cancer spreads to the brain, it's very bad news. The most common cancers that spread to the brain are lung cancer, breast cancer, and actually melanoma, skin cancer. And when they spread to the brain, it's really not good. The patients don't live very long. There are, very limited treatment options for them. Sometimes surgery could help them, radiation could help them, and certain therapies. where this concept of precision medicine sometimes comes into play when we're lucky, as well as the immunotherapy drugs that we talked about. But still, there's a lot of work to be done to understand how cancer cells interact with the brain, why they like going to the brain over other organs, what happens when they get there. Do they invade within the brain, or do they just stay localized? And questions such as these are what my main interest is in these days. Understanding. Go ahead.
No, so I don't, I don't process and comprehend, but cancer cells leave where they initially grow, and they migrate, and what you just said, lung cancer cells love to go up to the brain. Is it because it's close to the brain?
So yeah, this is really the crux of the question that we have, is this concept of what's called organotropism. So why did they go to one organ over another organ? Why does breast cancer like the bone, the lung, the liver, and the brain, but not anything else?
So it's
Or
something in the
yeah, so
in the makeup of a lung cancer cell.
so the main, the most commonly accepted theory of this, which is not really a theory, it's pretty common sense if you think about it. It was called the seed and soil hypothesis, that you have to have the right seed, which is your cancer cell, going to the right soil, which is the organ that it's going to. That it's the interaction between, if you want to plant a apple tree, you need soil that's fertile for an apple tree. But then if you want to plant a pineapple tree in the same soil, it won't work. Whereas if you want, and vice versa, you need to have the right match of your seed and your soil. And with that, what I mean by right match can mean a lot of different things. That it could be, the different mutations that your cancer cells have that makes it fit with the organ. It could be even deeper than that, the metabolism that these cells have, the epigenetic profiles that these cells have, all sorts of different things that make a cancer cell want to go to that particular organ. And so identifying factors both in the seed and in the soil that makes cancer cells go to the brain is one of the things that we're working hard at figuring out.
Wow. Interesting stuff. Wow. And you're right on the front lines. All right, enough with all this. Enough. Let's lighten it up before we cut off the interview. Let's lighten it up. So, Matthew, do you believe in ghosts? Have you? And I asked that question because you've been down here in New Jersey, and we've done some ghost hunts, correct?
We have attempted to do some ghost hunts. Do I believe in ghosts? I'm sorry to your audience or you, but so far for me the answer is a pretty resounding no.
Okay.
But I am always open, and that's why I tag along when I come to Jersey for the ghost hunts.
Yes.
I have yet to be convinced so far.
Yeah, and
we'll still keep coming. Next time I'm around, we'll go again.
Yes, we will.
Maybe my mind will be changed.
Yes. When we're off air, I have to tell you. But anyway, yeah. So I've kind of schlepped you around to a haunted cemetery that worked for me at some point. You and Justin came with me there, and we went to a haunted pizza place in Bordentown, New Jersey. Went in the basement looking for ghosts, where your cousin Neil and I interacted with the ghost. So unfortunately, we just never got lucky. So you need to come back down here, and we'll do more ghost hunts. And that's a great way to end this wonderful session that started this morning, and boom, we've consummated this interview, and it was great. This was a great, truly, Matthew. This was Matt. Now that I really know you, I'm going to call you Matt. Teasing. No, this was great, and really, thank you so much for your time and for doing this. It was so interesting, and my tapping in Fascinating, and you're going back on Monday to work and stuff and the research. So I only wish you good things. I saw you not too long ago, a couple of months ago, and it was great and to be continued. Thank you so much, Cousin Matthew.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, Cal.
All right, to be continued. You know what? You'll come back and we'll talk more
I'd love to.
anytime. All right, thank you, Matthew.